Good afternoon. I am Paula Fontana, Interim President with the National Black MBA Association. Thank you so much for joining us today for Elevating Black Talent in Tech, sponsored by GenSpark. So if you are not familiar with us, the mission of the National Black MBA Association is to lead in the creation of educational, wealth building, and growth opportunities for Blacks throughout all stages of their careers as students, professionals, and entrepreneurs. And we can only accomplish this mission in partnership with organizations that take the time to engage with our members, such as our sponsor today, GenSpark. So there has been a lot of discussion, not only about how to attract Black talent in tech, but also how to support that talent once they are in the industry. So I am excited about today's conversation and about the solutions that will arise. Moderating the discussion for today is LaShawn Solomon, a purpose-driven leader committed to promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion within the media, tech, telecom industries, and the community. She has over 14 years of experience successfully developing and implementing strategic initiatives that drive revenue and scalability for Fortune 50 companies and global nonprofit organizations. As the head of DEI Partnership Development and Strategy for Pyramid Consulting, which is the parent company of GenSpark, LaShawn's role oversees Pyramid's intentionality, love that, intentionality, inclusive efforts around diversity, recruiting, employee and contingent staffing engagement, and community impact across the entire company portfolio. So after this short video, please give GenSpark your undivided attention.
In today's talent landscape, employers are facing a critical challenge: the lack of talent. While job seekers are looking for opportunities to upskill and reskill to stay competitive, GenSpark is recasting the tech workforce by developing a skilled and diverse pipeline of talent that better reflects today's society. Our unique process is designed to build a bridge between companies who are having trouble filling positions and potential employees who need that extra experience to fill them. First, we partner with amazing companies to understand their talent pipeline needs. Our connections with these organizations deliver once in a lifetime opportunities to motivated job seekers. Then we find people with drive and potential who either need to gain some hands on experience or are mid career and want to update their skills. GenSpark provides customized training programs to empower job seekers to take their career to the next level. We partner with thousands of universities to prepare students as they enter the world of work, especially in the field of technology. GenSparkers are qualified, skilled individuals, trained to meet specific employer needs. They come from all walks of life, contributing to the richness of an organization's talent. We believe in hiring and training with heart. Our unique process provides companies with continuous improvements to their workforce, flexibility in their decision to hire, and a strong focus on diversity and inclusion. Whether you're a job seeker looking to spark your career or a future employer looking for the next generation of your workforce, we can help. Introducing GenSpark. Get in touch today to learn more.
Awesome. Thank you for that video. LaShawn, you have the floor.
Thank you, Paula, for that warm introduction. And hello, everyone. Again, my name is LaShawn Solomon, Head of DE&I Partnership Development and Strategy for Pyramid Consulting, one of the largest IT staffing firms in the US and the parent company of GenSpark. Pyramid Consulting and its family of companies are committed to being intentionally inclusive by ensuring that all people are provided with equal opportunity. Now, as you may recall from our video, GenSpark is working with corporations to recast a more diverse workforce in tech. 76% of talent sourced by GenSpark come from underrepresented groups. 39% of that talent that is sourced by GenSpark identify as Black or African American. Additionally, our Belonging program consists of 7 employee resource groups that provide opportunities to connect like minded individuals to encourage a sense of belonging. I am thrilled to be representing our Black Culture Alliance ERG and partnering with the National Black MBA Association for this important discussion on elevating Black talent in tech. Please use the chat throughout our discussion to type in your questions and or comments. We will present them later at the end of the program to our amazing panel. Now, please join me in welcoming our esteemed panelists, starting with Alicia Campbell, Chief Executive Officer at Culture Shift HR, Nia Darville, DE&I Program Manager at Greenhouse Software, Taquanda Hill, General Manager, IT Transformation, Technology Talent Transformation at Delta Airlines, and Sir Clayton Sinclair III, Director of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Hinkle. Alicia, Nia, Taquanda, Clayton, are you all ready to get started with our conversation today?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do
Let's
it.
do it. So let's start by introducing our audience to you to know more about your professional journey up to this point. Alicia, why don't you kick us off?
Yes, well, thank you so much for everybody for being here. And for those of you who are listening and watching, you are definitely in for a treat. So with my own professional journey, it's really interesting. I always have a little laugh when I tell the story because I actually went to school for accounting, and to end up, almost over 10 years later to be running my own DE&I and HR consultancy firm, I wouldn't have believed it if you had, shown me a crystal ball. But when I started my job search, I went to a recruitment firm to really help me get my foot into the accounting industry, and I walked out getting a job. And I say that to say that in life, and specifically in your career, you are going to get opportunities that you may not always expect. But when you have a mindset that's like, I want to be challenged, I want to try new things, and I, want to see where my career can take me, that's when you can truly have an incredible career experience. And so through my work and through my experiences and my love and passion for people and creating inclusive environments, I've been able to create an incredible organization with a mighty team that truly is shifting cultures in workplaces across North America. And so it's exciting to see the work and the real change that we're cultivating and how it's creating incredible impact across everybody's lives across North America.
Thank you so much, Alicia. And it's so interesting that you mentioned how you started out majoring in accounting. I'm a former biochemist. And it was sophomore year. I got my first D, and that meant this is not the door for me.
There you go.
And then I had to make a pivot in my career. So thank you and welcome. All right, Nia, let's hear from you and know more about your story.
Thank you. Hello, beautiful people. My name is Nia Darville Stokes Hicks. I am the Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Allyship Program Manager at Greenhouse Software, which is a pretty incredible company. If you haven't heard of Greenhouse Software, we are actually enabling companies to do the best hiring that they've ever done and doing it in a way that removes bias from the process. And so I encourage you to take a look. Similar to Alicia, I have a very different background as well. I studied speech language pathology and audiology. And so I'm sure that's a common theme that you're going to hear from a lot of technologists that you'll hear from today is our life changes, and every experience that we have builds on the next one to prepare us for where we are today. And so I rely on the things I learned in speech language pathology all the time for how I'm communicating and how I'm making sure to reach my audience in a way that they need to be reached. And so whatever you're doing right now, just know it's okay if you're not doing it in 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, but know that it will prepare you for your next. I have a background in nonprofit organizations, as well as just a really deep experience in creating inclusive experiences. And I'm so happy to be here today.
Welcome, Nia. All right, Taquanda, you're up next.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. And I'm excited to be here and excited to jump into this topic. It's a huge passion of mine, but I'll start a little bit about me. I like to consider myself a unicorn in the IT space. I went to school for political science, public administration. Fortunately, my junior year, I got a life surprise and had my son and knew that I couldn't go to law school, so I had to get a job. Reality hit. I was able to carve out a career that allowed me to really lead me to where I am. I've always had a passion for people and development. I've always been a critical thinker. So being innovative was always a part of, who I am, which took me through my journey into IT. I started out in a claims job. Honestly, that kind of gave me my sweet spot of wanting to be a lawyer, but happened to get a job and take care of my son. So I, advanced in that role, was able to go into management, made a pivot, and got involved in software development implementations. From there, I took a role in business administration, not business administration, excuse me, business analyst, where I was doing functional requirements, working with the business and IT. Then I dabbled in organizational change management. And right now, I'm leading one of the largest cloud transformations for Delta Airline, which is transforming our entire workforce, building out our new operating model, introducing new capabilities and new ways of working, as well as I run our Next Gen Academy program for underrepresented minorities and bringing more junior talent into Delta in the space of IT. So don't have a very technical background. However, I play in that space with all of the other capabilities and competencies that I have. So you can be anything if you definitely lean in and learn and, commit to being a continuous learner, which is something that I have in my toolkit, which allowed me to, scratch the surface of many different fields along my journey, but carve out a space unique for me and what I love doing.
Amazing. Welcome to Kwanda, and thank you for sharing your story. Looking forward to your insights in our discussion today. All right, Sir Clayton, let's hear from you.
I don't know where the "sir" comes from, LaShawn, but thank you. And I also don't know that I can hold a candle to any of these wonderful folks on the panel with me. Although I will say I'm 5 for 5 in that I started in marketing and now work for some reason in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Taquanda, I also have to say I'm completely in love with Delta. So I'm a medallion member, and I'm going out on Delta tomorrow morning from LA. I'm in LA right now. So going back to Atlanta. So yeah, if I have any problems, I know who to contact now. So, I am a Howard University grad. I went to, as I said, I studied marketing, got my MBA at Wharton way back in 1996 when they were still writing on stone tablets, and have bounced around really, honestly. I started my first actual job was as a financial analyst on Wall Street. So there wasn't even marketing. So I started like really early, just breaking away from what I studied. But I think to echo what has already been said, the continuous learning piece and the ability to understand that I could be anything I wanted to be if I could apply certain competencies, I think is what I've found to be useful as I've bounced around from being a project manager and program manager, business analyst. I've done that. Product development, I've done that. But I have a real passion for this idea of creating equitable and inclusive spaces. And so got a diversity certification back in the mid 2000s and had a program manager role at a major financial institution where I ran all of the DEI programming for their corporate and investment bank, and decided that I didn't have the emotional maturity in my mid life to have that job. And so went back into just industry and business roles. And then when I turned 50, decided that I was not leaving the kind of value in the world that I wanted to from a legacy perspective. And so got back into the space of creating equitable and inclusive spaces as a full-time role, and find myself now at Henkel for close to a year. So for those of you that are thinking the knife company, we don't make knives. We are a consumer goods as well as adhesives organizations are our two main businesses. So products like Dial soap and all laundry detergent, Persil laundry detergent, those kinds of things we make, as well as beauty and hair care products. So Diva Curl, Got to Be, Schwarzkopf, and then we also are in, again, the adhesive space. So if you have any kind of cell phone, the glass that fronts that cell phone is probably stuck onto the chassis with something that Henkel sells from our adhesive technology organization. So we're about 8,000 people in the United States and Canada and Puerto Rico, which is where my domain is. And I have responsibility for all the diversity, equity, and inclusion programming for all 8,000 of those teammates. And so happy to be here on this illustrious panel and share with you anything you'd like to know.
Excellent. Welcome, Clayton, and thank you so much for sharing your journey. And what I'm hearing from all of you is that you started in one place and then you ended up in another. And you were able to navigate through all of that by being committed to learning new things, learning new skill sets, and pursuing also what is passionate to you, and just being open to that. So thank you so much for sharing. So now let's get into our first question that is focused on barriers. We've heard about what's good to do, being curious, continuously learning. But what are the common barriers that Black students and professionals face when entering or excelling in tech? Taquanda, would you like to kick us off on this topic?
Sure. There are a couple of barriers. I would say from an entry point, is the recruiting process, number one, as well as the hiring process is a barrier. Oftentimes, if you go just from school age up through education, there's not a lot of representation of tech, Black representation. So from that standpoint alone, if you don't see it, you don't have that awareness, there's a gap right there. Also, the curriculums are focused more on computer science. It doesn't showcase a lot of the tech adjacent opportunities that I mentioned before. So, I think that we as a community need to take a step back and look at our school systems, make sure that we're visible, make sure that we're getting involved at the early onset of interest for our young children into tech careers. I think if there's a gap there. I was looking at, just some research around, how are we trending with Black representation in tech. And right now I think we moved the needle. I believe it said something like 1%. If you break that down, 5% of the tech we are 5% of the tech workforce, 3% of tech executives, and 1% of overall tech founders. So that's a very low percentage. And I believe a lot of that is around representation, how our schools are presenting tech opportunities, what is the awareness that we need to. I know just with my family, they're always asking me to fix a computer. I'm like, I don't touch a computer. So I think it's a lot of the awareness that we need to lean into and bring that to our communities so that we can impact and see more representation in tech.
Well said. As far as the main focal point being around awareness, one, exposing the younger generation that it's possible to pursue other careers. And that's also what inspired me to pursue a full-time career in DEI, because it was always something that I championed outside of my day job. And then I transitioned to doing it full-time and creating these spaces. So Alicia, I'm sure you have some comments to add here as well.
Yes, plus one to everything Taquanda has shared. And I think what's so important in regards to the challenges is that the element of that is not always having access to the resources. As Taquanda shared, when we look at the demographic and the representation of, minorities or specifically Blacks and African Americans in the tech space, the numbers, although have slightly improved over the past 5 years, they're still significantly smaller than our other demographic counterparts. So when we think about how we activate in the workplace, from having mentors to having individuals who could train us, support us in a way that look and can, represent who we are, there's not really much of a lot of examples or connections that we can have an affinity to. And so I think, especially when you're starting out in your career, that could be very nerve-wracking, where you maybe want to ask for help, get additional support, but you're not seeing individuals who reflect you and then wanting to see that example, like, okay, if I apply myself, if I learn X, Y, Z, this is what I can attain to. And so I think due to the lack of representation, it doesn't create that full picture of what a full-grown tech career career can look like. And I think, with, students and those who are early on in their careers, it can create those question marks of, do I really belong here? Is this really the sector for me? If I have challenges, who can I really speak to, or who can I connect with that can help me or help me elevate my career? So I think representation is a really big blockage, and something that, through the incredible work of our sponsors here today that are actively changing and, changing that landscape every single day. And then I think when we also think about the opportunities when it comes to jobs and creating access, it's the way of how we show up. We don't always necessarily have those mentors or those advisors to say, okay, on your resume, have X, Y, Z, or when you're in an interview, speak to these types of softwares or this type of, coding language. So it's also that opportunity to get even trained on how to show up, how to be present, and how to articulate your active knowledge in this space, how to really answer these questions, and how to also feel comfortable and confident in the way that you show up as well. So because of those gaps, I think that it's a barrier to not only getting into tech, but also to how we thrive in the workplace once we're in the roles.
Well said, Alicia. And I'm going to just cap that off with a few data points. A report from McKinsey and Company estimates that at current tech hiring and promotion rates, it will take 95 years for Black employees to reach talent parity, 12% representation in the private sector. This is extremely disheartening. And to all the points that you mentioned, from lack of awareness, lack of access to mentors and sponsors, it's the only way we're able to change that tide is by, one, engaging and increasing that representation of Black and African American leaders in technology. And also, what I would advise for people who are looking to pivot into tech is to seek out organizations where you can engage other leaders that look like you. There are many organizations out there that are creating those opportunities and creating those safe spaces, obviously like National Black MBA Association and many more. So now let's talk a little bit more as far as personal experiences. Clayton, I would love to hear from you as far as what's been your personal experience around limiting behaviors in the workplace, and how have you navigated that?
I'm still dealing with those personal experiences of limiting behavior. And I think that many of us as African Americans, Black folk, find ourselves sometimes in spaces where we may feel like we don't measure up, right? And so my personal bent was needing to always be perfect in everything that I did, where I watched my white colleagues around me not have to or not feel or not display that same level of perfection. And I'll give you a quick anecdote. I think, with emails, right? I would spend 5-10 minutes looking over 2-line throwaway emails early in my career. And so when I multiply that by all of the emails that I've written over 30 plus years of working or close to it, right? I recognize how much time I probably wasted, right? That my colleagues, that my white peers were not wasting, thinking or worrying about, is this 2-line email going to get me in trouble, or am I representing Black folk right in this short interaction? So what I'd say is I'd encourage everyone to think about what are some of the things that might be limiting behaviors for you. But then I also want to piggyback on the last question in the sense that I think, once you are in an organization, are you finding ways to have that organization help support where you ultimately want to be? So I think we often don't, as Black folk, don't either know what resources exist or go after them once we find them. So things like, will your current job pay for a certification that you need to get to the next level, right? And then if you do that, that certification can serve you when you're job switching, when you're changing, when you're finding your next company or opportunity. So it's about sometimes taking the bull by the horns in some senses and trying to figure out what can you get from the organization that you're with. And then also it's about mitigating those things that might limit you from a behavioral perspective so that you can show up and be your kind of full authentic self.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you brought up certifications and advocating for yourself and seeking professional development from your employers. And for those joining us, this is also something that you need to bring up in the interview process or the negotiation phase. asking what is available, what resources exist that the company will provide to invest in your growth and your development. Because obviously, you want to show up as your best and most authentic self and perform and exceed expectations. And you need their support in order to do that, to continue to grow your skill set. And don't be afraid to ask for it. All right, let's now hang out with Nia. Now, Nia, according to Russell Reynolds Associates, 47% of Black tech professionals strongly agree that they must frequently switch between companies for career growth. What tools and strategies are Black professionals using to navigate their career growth?
Definitely. I think I'm going to go to the cliche answer, networking, right? But how do you network? The first thing is really knowing who you are. If you don't know who you are, you don't know what value you bring to this world or what skills you can add to a company, it's very difficult to advocate for yourself. It's very difficult to pitch yourself to people. So, first, know yourself very well, personally, professionally. What do you bring? How do you make the world better? And then communicating that. Are you actually using LinkedIn effectively? Are you actually sharing your story? Are you actually connecting with professionals who are in spaces that you're curious about or that are doing things that you want to do? Are you reaching out, seeing if they're willing to have a coffee chat, meet virtually? And then finally, are you asking really good questions, right? If you aren't asking questions, you won't even necessarily know what possibilities there are. Where do you ask these questions? I think a lot of us forget about regional groups. Here in Atlanta, we've got groups like the Technology Association of Georgia and Atlanta Tech Village and Atlanta Tech Professionals. These are all people in my local area who want to meet other people and who are oftentimes recruiting for and figuring out who they want to work with in the future. And so, are you putting yourself in these spaces? Do you know who you are in order to advocate for yourself in these spaces? And are you really sharing who you are on your LinkedIn effectively?
I love all these points. I'm so glad you brought up associations, Nia, because the great thing about associations, aside from the networking piece, is that it's a safe space to try new things.
Mhm.
If you are looking to grow a specific skill set or build an intellectual muscle, associations are great places to try those efforts and fail in a safe environment. What's the worst that can happen? They ask you not to volunteer anymore. And so it's just another outlet where you can learn more about yourself, discover what you're good at, and then put that together in an effective pitch to communicate that to others. Another practice that I've benefited from has been leveraging adding a note when I send a LinkedIn request. I actually love the character limits on there because it forces me to think about the important points about my skill set and the highlights that I want that recipient to know about me.
Mhm.
All right, so now let's talk about this notion around staying at one company long term, 20 plus years. I think that's a thing of the past. But Alicia, I would love to get your thoughts on this.
Yes, 100%. That is definitely a thing of the past. And not to say that people don't want long-term careers. What I think the reason is that there's been such a pivotal shift, especially for us in tech, is that we have a very old school mentality, or I would say institutions like workplaces have a very old school mentality on how they think of what a career should look like. You know, they think that, okay, you get into a job, entry level, you work your way up the corporate ladder, get to a senior level position, retire, and there you go. The world is very, very, very different today. And from needing multiple streams of income to not just make ends meet, but to have a thriving, successful life, to being curious and learning things at a pace that is probably 3 or 4 times faster than 2 to 3 generations ago, to wanting to expand and be active participants in a globalized world. There's so many reasons to why us in the tech industry actively pursue and go to different organizations. Even when we think about the boom of AI over the past couple of months, there are honestly so many amazing organizations, new technologies, new ways of the world and the way that we work that anyone in tech who is continuing to be on that cutting edge wants to be a part of. So I think organizations, one, need to have a whole mindset overhaul that, with the average individual being in a role for probably 18 to 20 months the most, and then even probably seeing those same timeframes for the organization itself is really, really key. Because if you're thinking about the longevity of your organization, from succession planning to knowledge transfer, how are you creating those sustainability practices from day one of the person joining your team? Point number two, how are you creating engaging and transformational career pathing within your organization? Maybe I don't want to stay in this lane of tech. Maybe I want to move to UX. Maybe I want to move to program or project management. So how are you giving me the flexibility and the leverage and the opportunity to move and mobilize within my organization? And then three, how are you helping me to keep learning? How do I have opportunities to go to conferences, go to learning seminars, take a course or get another certificate so that I can continually, upgrade and, further my own education? So unless organizations begin to think and really have a transformational element of how they look at career pathing and succession planning, they're going to constantly have a revolving door of talent, and people are going to continually look around to see, okay, where else can I go? How else can I move? And then to that other point about succession planning, a big part that we spoke about earlier is compensation. A lot of times, and I know myself, I am guilty of it. I was a serial job hopper when I was in corporate. After that 15-month mark, if I wasn't getting the raise I wanted, I was gone 2 months later. So how are we continuing to keep our compensation frameworks competitive, as well as equitable to our other counterparts in the organization, and keeping our compensation packages really robust to have multiple layers and different elements that keep me engaged on all levels?
Thank you so much for sharing all of those gems, Alicia. And I would love to ask you a follow-up question more about, when you're looking at compensation packages, what are some things that you are asking for that maybe the average job seeker may not be aware of that they could ask for?
That's a great question. So first and foremost, you want to look to see if the organization is providing any stock options or anything with like a stock or value proposition from that perspective, because a lot of times that can be an opportunity to increase what that looks like for yourself as part of your initial compensation package, as well as building that out as you continue to stay with the organization. So I'd say that's number one. Number two is learning and development. So having some type of annual stipend to increase your learning and growth, whether that's courses, certifications, whatever that looks like for you, to ensure that you have that flexibility. And then I would think three is, what does career mobilization look like? Like, am I really, do I have to stay in this role for a year before I can, spread my wings and fly or move on to another opportunity internally? So I think knowing those three things and then being able to negotiate on those points is going to be really, really key as part of your compensation package into a new role.
Thank you so much, Alicia, for those insights. I hope everyone was taking notes about all these gems. So now let's talk about, if you are someone that's interested in starting a career in tech, but you aren't confident in your mathematic or science skills. So what areas should you be considering? Taquanda, let's hear from you.
I mentioned it before about tech adjacent careers. If you have transferable skills, I would say start from there. I think oftentimes we do get intimidated by the mathematics and the science skills, but technology is changing. There's a lot of emphasis now on some of the soft skills of technology as well. So I use the example, we are a TikTok social media world right now. So there's a big, space in digital marketing that has a technology component. I think it's very important for us to just recognize that technology has become more embedded in every aspect of our life, that, there is a need. So I would say look at some of the soft skills opportunity within technology. I know also cybersecurity, that has a lot to do with, risk, compliance, as well as, learning, talent development in technology is key, because technology is ever changing as well. Right now, we have so much emphasis on, training and upskilling. So, we look at some of our education professions. I was just talking to a young lady who asked me, how do I get in technology? I've been a teacher for years. I'm like, we need curriculums written for our new, programs. And there's a need there. So I think we just need to, I mentioned it before, and I can't stress it enough, that awareness around what was technology perceived years ago to where we are now is totally different. And there's a lot of opportunity where your mathematic and your science skills are not it's important if you know specifically you want to go into engineering and coding of some sort, but there's also a lot of materials out there. AWS have so many free learning offerings for individuals. Someone mentioned certification. There's certifications in so many different fields. I know for me, I've never been one to wait on my organization to pay for me a certification. I just went out there. I'm like, hey, I'm interested in that. I'm going to get it. And sometimes you have to do it for yourself and just learn, so that way you're staying caught up. But I would say definitely the education around what technology is today versus what we thought years ago with cloud and, all the AWS technology that we have now to support. I think you should really lean into, look at some of the soft skills of technology as well.
Absolutely. Technology is going to continue to evolve to the point where it's inclusive of various skill sets that aren't just hard tech skills, and where you can bring in those transferable skills into these various areas and roles. So thank you so much, Taquanda, for your insights. Now, a study from the Kapoor Center for Social Impact and the Ford Foundation, they actually found that unfair treatment to be the top driver of employee turnover, in particular for employees from underrepresented groups. More than 1 in 3 Black participants in this 2017 survey said that they left a job or company due to unfairness within the past year. And of those surveyed, 25% of underrepresented men and women of color reported experiencing stereotyping at twice the rate of white and Asian men and women. Now, so when it comes to navigating the workspace and the workplace, how do you foster and grow a sense of belonging? Clayton, let's get your thoughts on this.
Yikes, how much time do we have? I think that one of the things that's been important to me along my career path has been this idea of making sure I'm in the right role. And a lot of times I have evaluated that very narrowly in terms of, are my competencies a fit for a job? And so what I think from a sense of belonging is the competencies being a fit is the foundation or the tip of the iceberg, if you will. What you then have to try and evaluate is, are your values a fit for the place where you are, right? And so, evaluating your potential organization or your organization once you are there on a regular basis, particularly after you've landed, is very, very, very important. I think we kind of forget that sometimes. I think we just dig into the heads down of a day-to-day, this is our job and let's do this well. And we can ignore as Black folks some of the small things and slights, but they add up, as we all know. And so deciding very quickly if you're going to stay within an organization, I think is important, because I at least have stayed many places probably where I knew I stayed too long, where I allowed that misalignment to grow, that I knew the organization wasn't going to foster that sense of belonging. And so I should have left before I did. But there is a lot that we can do to also make sure that we are setting ourselves up for success in that realm. So again, someone's mentioned it earlier, I mentioned it, I think, as well, but being authentically you. So finding a place where you can be authentically you is very, very, very important. And like I said, sometimes we just look at what's the job out there, or what's that competency that they're looking for, and not looking at the holistic picture. So just make sure that you have a very holistic view of what it looks like to be successful in an organization. And then the organization has the flip side of having to try and create spaces where you do feel included, right? Where you do feel like you belong. So the onus is not all on us as employees, but it's also on the organization. And that's where I go back to that idea of, if you see misalignment and you think it's going to be a while before the organization catches up, then that might be where you say, you know what, this isn't the place for me. even though I'm great at the role or could be great, this isn't the place I want to spend my time because they don't value my contributions fully and they won't over that, mid to long term, right? So just you got to hold in balance both of those things, your individual competencies along with how the organization is set up to help you be successful, assuming you're doing all the things you're supposed to do.
Well said. And I like how that ties back to going back to the beginning of what Nia mentioned as far as knowing yourself and knowing the value that you bring to an organization and effectively communicating that. And we actually have a question for Nia. Specifically, what advice should be shared for folks who do not have the premium for LinkedIn but want to connect with and network with other people?
Listen, premium is definitely worth the investment, but if you don't, that is okay. I mean, the search features on LinkedIn are probably some of your best friends. So if you are looking at a particular company, search for a particular title at that company, reach out to the person. LaShonda mentioned earlier a note that you can add to your connection request. Hey, I'm new in this space. I want to learn more. You don't have to have LinkedIn Premium to send requests. You don't have to have LinkedIn Premium to make sure that you are telling your story in a very compelling way. You don't have to have LinkedIn Premium to make sure your profile picture, your LinkedIn banner, and your headline are concise and communicate exactly who you are. And so, yes, LinkedIn Premium is a fantastic addition, but there's still so much you can do without it.
Yeah, I completely agree. There's actually a LinkedIn expert that hosts ongoing sessions about all the different advancements they make, how you can customize your LinkedIn page. There's so much you can leverage on LinkedIn for free. And it's just a matter of investigating and taking advantage of those different features. So Nia, let's hang out with you a little bit more and talk about how can Black professionals take more control of their career and its advancement, considering unconscious bias in leadership and racial barriers.
Yeah. I've really been fascinated with this concept lately. It's specifically around artificial intelligence and how the way that artificial intelligence works is you're taking these different inputs that come from different sources and taking what works from all the different inputs and creating a masterful output, right? And I think us as professionals, the more inputs we can get, the more stories we can get. We talked earlier about not necessarily having exposure to as many careers or possibilities are even there in tech. So if we're asking questions, if we are listening to inputs, if we are figuring out how to take what works from different stories like we're sharing here and combine it, we can actually create the career that we want. I think another major thing is it's a balance of creating more safety both in your spaces and in yourself. And so it's that balance. So sometimes your space may not be the safest and you don't have the luxury of pivoting to another job at that particular moment. How are you creating safety within yourself? How are you expanding your skill set? How are you expanding your confidence to be able to maneuver in these unsafe spaces and to be able to exit when you need to? Also, if you are in a space where you feel like you can make an impact, how do you increase safety, not only for yourself, but others who look like you and others who are underrepresented like you? And so balancing those two, creating safety within yourself so that when you're in these unsafe environments, you're still okay. And then also creating safety in your environment so that you don't have to deal with all of those unconscious biases and things like that.
Thank you so much, Nia, for your input here. Let's now go back to Alicia and talk about entrepreneurial skills. What are some ways that entrepreneurial skills can help Black professionals in technology?
Oh my goodness. There is so much we can do when we think about the power of the entrepreneurial skills or even like an entrepreneurial spirit. I think one thing that maybe gives some intimidation to entrepreneurialness or wanting to be an entrepreneur, wanting to do things on our own is to understand that everyone has the ability to be an entrepreneur and it doesn't need to be a one size fits all type of profile. So I think that the fact that you are curious, the fact that you want to explore, learn more, build, solve a problem, create impact, be innovative, all those things comprise of an entrepreneur. But what really activates it is action. And so I think when you think about entrepreneurialism and wanting to take that on for yourself, that doesn't always need to be having, my own company or my own side hustle. It could be more of a, how can I be an entrepreneur in the organization that I work for? How am I bringing great ideas to the table? How am I solving problems? How am I helping to create bigger impact, not just for my team or for my immediate kind of, diameters, but how do I create impact above and throughout the rest of the organization? So for example, if you have a simple idea that can actually save, a team, 15 minutes of project time or project meetings or creating more efficiency of how we know who's in the office versus out of the office, those things, although simple, are literally changing the way people work and engage in the workplace. That is entrepreneurial. So it's really defining what entrepreneurial means for you and then taking the action to make that come to life. And I think one thing that is so key that I wish I had learned way back when I started, going down this entrepreneurial rabbit hole is that you create the path you want to go on. There's incredible examples out there. You can read all the business books in the world, but until you decide, how do I want to show up? How do I want to create my legacy? How do I want to create the change that I want to see? Then you'll really, like, the world is your oyster and you can craft what that looks like and do something new that maybe has never been done or seen before. And to take the courage to do that, because it does take courage to go and think and be outside of the box. And so I think understanding that, getting comfortable, going back to Nia's point, knowing your why, knowing who you are is so, so, so important. And to double click on what she mentioned about feeling safe within yourself, that is so, so, so optimal, because we are going to always be in places where we don't think we belong, where we don't think we matter, our voices aren't being heard. But if you can find that safety within yourself to know that I do belong here, what I do say matters, the way that I create solutions is different or is, my own ideas and mechanisms, that can be, career changing and altering in the best possible ways. So don't sleep on yourself. Take the time to do some interpersonal work, explore your strengths, whether that's through a personality test, working with someone, a coach that can help you uncover what your talents are, but always make sure that you are discovering and searching who you are so you can bring your best self into this world.
Yes, I don't know about everybody else, but I just felt like I got a pep talk from Alicia. So thank you for this midday inspiration and sharing that. I can't reiterate that enough, of the importance for us to have confidence in ourselves, confidence in our skill sets, and knowing that when we walk in a room, any room, we deserve to be there just like anybody else.
Absolutely.
Now, Clayton, I have a question for you. What advice do you have for young professionals starting out in their career to feel confident going into the workforce or taking the next step in their career? We know confidence is one of them, having that entrepreneurial skill set and being able to apply that. What else would you like to add, Clayton?
So many things, right? But just plus one cosign on everything Alicia just said, Nia as well. But I really, if I had to add something, I think I would add or emphasize again that sort of personal inventory of what you are good at and standing in that, right? And it's okay if other people don't immediately recognize that value, as long as you know what it is and then you have strategies in your wheelhouse or back pocket, if you will, that you're going to be using to bring those to the fore. And I think confidence starts with being again, sure of you, sure of yourself. So make sure that you've got a support system and a support network, if you're not getting those things at work, that is able to give you those things, that's able to fill you up, right? Make sure that you've got outlets that are able to bolster you where you need bolstering, right? Make sure you're creating your own community. And someone else said that earlier, right? But it's so imperative, I think, to able to have that confidence is you have that community, because often we enter spaces where we are one of one or one of a few. And so being able to have a community outside of just that workspace that, again, can still provide us with that support that we need, that help to reassure us that we are enough, that we are ready, that we are capable, that we are able to for greatness, destined for greatness, even, I found to be very important, that community aspect. And again, it doesn't have to be the immediate work environment that you're in. So just cultivate that community to help bolster that spirit of courageousness and that spirit of value and that value that you bring.
Thank you, Clayton. And staying on that same topic or the vein of creating a community, according to the Russell Reynolds Associates and Balance Report, Black IT pros are often not afforded the same level of insight into how the game is played or who they need to know and how to plan their paths for success. And in fact, when asked, 78% of non-Black tech professionals said they understood the importance of networking in the industry, while 56% of Black tech talent said the same. And 57% of non-Black talent said they typically find out about open roles through their network, while only 39% of Black talent said the same. Which brings us to the importance of sponsorship and also how sponsorship is different from mentorship. Taquanda, what advice would you have for younger professionals on how they can secure a mentor or sponsor? And also, can you elaborate on the difference between mentoring and sponsorship?
Yeah. So I'll take the latter part of that question first. You are absolutely right. Sponsorship is more important because that's the one that's going to stick their neck out for you. That's the one that's going to be more of an advocate. Where a mentorship is more of a relationship. It can be organically formed, or you can seek out a mentor. For young professionals, my advice is to get active. Get active in your local communities. And we talked about different organizations that you can seek out mentor. Your mentor doesn't always have to be someone that you work with. Sometimes finding mentors outside of that it's just as key. But when you're as far as when you're in your employer, it is important to have a sponsor, someone that will advocate for you when you're not in the room. And I'll go a little further than mentor and sponsorship. Create your own personal board of directors, someone that's going to give you feedback, someone that will, someone that can, another person that can ping you for stretch assignments, someone that's going to hold you accountable. I would say, in addition to that, while you're building your while you're, seeking out mentors and, you have a sponsor that's going to advocate for you, you personally build your own personal board of directors that will hold you accountable for constant professional development. I have been doing that. I got that advice from someone that I would consider more of a sponsor for me probably a couple of years ago. And I have 5 individuals that I consult in on whatever I want to do. And it has been very, very effective for me.
Excellent. And Nia, did you have some additional thoughts to add here?
Yes, I mean, there was a qualifier in that question. How can younger professionals secure mentorship? I just want to make sure everyone knows that everyone has the capability of mentoring you and helping you become better. I mentioned earlier, I have this idea that I crowdsource my life. And that means I listen to 10 million stories. I take what works, I leave what doesn't, and I use them to figure out what I want my life to look like going forward. Some of those mentors are 5 years old. Some of those mentors are older. Some of them are my peers. Some of them are in different industries and things like that. My point is anyone can be a mentor. The biggest thing is to lean in with curiosity, ask really good questions. Again, mentorship and sponsorship are different. So I just tapped in on the mentorship tip. But know that no matter where you are in your career, you can benefit from someone else's experience.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nia and Taquanda, for your insights. So for those who are probably thinking about, okay, what tech company do I need to look at given the current layoff economy in tech, how can I best support personal growth in that economy? Alicia, what are your insights here?
Yes, I think no matter what economy we are in, no matter what market we find ourselves in, always be learning. There are incredible platforms out there, whether it's like more self paced learning like Udemy, whether it's going and taking like an online certificate program. Learning and growing from a knowledge perspective will never go out of style, will never lead to a bad decision. Because where we are right now is that, yes, there are like tech layoffs happening, the market is reshifting a little bit, but we are going to be on an upward trend before the end of 2023, in my opinion. So get ready, stay awake, and stay prepared for when that trend comes back around. Again, we're seeing a massive push right now in AI platforms, technology, and user design services. If that's an area that's of interest to you, of importance to you, that you want to start to get your foot into, learn what those platforms are, understand that technology, begin to build up your repertoire and your inventory, so that when those jobs become open again, and when you can say, hey, I'm looking to make a move, you're already ready and you have all your ducks lined up. I would say now is a great time to prepare, go underground, get that knowledge, get that learning. And then when the time comes up, start to put yourself out there and begin to really market yourself, your new skill set, and get those new opportunities.
Thank you so much, Alicia, again for your insights and tips. And we have a few questions in the chat, so I'm going to pivot to the comments. And again, if anyone has any questions for our amazing panel, please type them in the comment section and I will bring them up. So one question we did have from the chat is around how to obtain a sponsor. We talked about the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, but can our panel elaborate more on how do you obtain a sponsor?
I would say, and I'll take that one. Obtaining a sponsor, usually a sponsor is someone that has worked with you. So I personally don't feel you obtain a sponsor. A sponsor is someone that becomes an advocate based on the work you've doing, the work you've done, and the value you've shown. So they become an advocate and a champion of you, and they're someone that will advocate for you when you're not in the room, or when you need someone to advocate, or when you look at succession planning or something like that. That is that individual that says, hey, I'll stick my neck out there for Taquanda. She does an excellent job. So you don't typically obtain a sponsor the way you can obtain and seek out a mentor. A sponsorship is normally someone that's seeking you out, in my personal opinion.
I 100% agree, because that's how it has been explained to me. A mentor is someone you ask, and then a sponsor is someone who finds you.
Yes.
And they find you based off of your body of work, how you show up, and how you brand yourself, what you're famous for,
Yes.
so to speak. So now let's talk about, we have another question as far as a specific example of how a sponsor has assisted you. I'll actually take this question. Taquanda, when you talked about a certification that you pursued independently on your own, it reminded me of a time where I was pursuing a career within a different business unit within a company that I worked at, and they had an upcoming event. I raised my hand and said, I'm going to travel to support this team with this particular effort. I had no idea if I would be getting reimbursed for it or not. I just knew I wanted the experience. Following that project, I had the opportunity to engage the division president at my current company, and I shared with him what I did. And he was taken aback by my initiative and said, you know what, we're going to reimburse you for it. And from that point, I gained a sponsor. And so that's just one example. All right, so we have another question as far as what resources are available on LinkedIn to improve public speaking. One quick tip before we pivot to the panel is you can actually leverage Microsoft Teams to record yourself and also monitor how you're speaking, and it will give you speaking tips of how you're showing up. You also have these features available in PowerPoint. And I'll see what else our panel would like to add.
I think LinkedIn is an incredible platform. I think it's great if you want to hone in on your speaking skills. I would say first look at speakers that you like. So for example, if there's a specific speaker, a specific topic that you're really engaged in, go to their events, listen into their podcasts, listen into their audio events, and begin to see the flavor and the themes of how they present themselves, and how they come to life. And then I would say from there, begin to engage to see what are some potential speaking opportunities that I could lean into. There's always events going on, whether it's on the LinkedIn platform, whether it's within your network, and reaching out to the event coordinator and saying, hey, is there an opportunity to speak? Is there an opportunity to moderate or facilitate or to host? So there's a lot of ways that you can use the network to also enhance your speaking, and then begin to use that platform to host your own events and begin to then, create your own little community for those who want to listen to you and your voice as well.
Great tips. All right, we are coming down to the final time of our session today, but we have one more question that I am going to present to our panel, and this is how it's written verbatim. Question for the only brother in the panel. Clayton, does DE&I, in your opinion, look different for Black women?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. Black women face a double share of challenges, if you will, both from a gender stereotype or role perspective, as well as from a racial perspective. So absolutely. I have rarely struggled in my career from my male perspective as a cisgendered male, right? So I could talk for hours about that difference, but I don't need to, because I see all the heads nodding up and down, which is usually agreement, right? So yeah, it's very different. So what I say often when I talk with Black women is, the advice I'm going to give you is from my perspective, right? So again, back to that authenticity piece. Take what pieces, as Nia has said so brilliantly several times, what pieces you can from this, and then figure out how you can make what I have said or the advice you've been given work for you in your context, right? Because what I'm able to get away with from my maleness is going to be different often in context and for what women are able to get away with again, right? So yes, it's absolutely very different.
Thank you, Clayton, for sharing your perspective and also being the only brother on this panel. So we're now going to wrap up our event today. There are still a few questions being asked, but everybody, you do have our LinkedIn profiles. Please connect with us. We are more than happy to connect with you offline and to further speak with you. I also just want to invite everyone to join Pyramid Consulting and GenSpark on February 28th. We are having our Black History Month program on that day, and there will be a link posted in the comments section for you to RSVP. Lastly, I want to thank the National Black MBA Association, Paula, Jasmine, Brent, and my amazing panel for hanging out with me today, being able to produce this phenomenal event. Happy Black History Month, everybody, and I'll now hand it back over to Paula.
Thank you so much. Wow. Talk about a power hour. I loved every minute of it. Incredible, insightful, so many wonderful nuggets that were dropped. Thank you, GenSpark. Thank you, panelists, for this partnership. And thank you all for your engagement. I would say the comment section was on and popping and just as enhancing for the engagement. So again, thank you all for joining us for this hour. We would love to hear from you. Your feedback is important to us, so we encourage you to fill out the survey that you will see dropped in the link. The first 25 people to complete that survey will be entered in a chance to win an Amazon gift card, so do not delay. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and until next time, take good care of yourselves and each other.